Most people believe money only leaves their bank account when they spend it. You buy groceries, pay rent, or subscribe to something online, and the balance goes down. Simple, but what if the biggest drains on your finances aren't purchases at all? What if money is quietly leaking out of your life every single day, even when you believe you're saving? No suspicious transactions, no fraud alerts, no warning from your bank, just a slow, invisible transfer of value away from you. The unsettling truth is that some of the biggest financial leaks are built directly into the modern economic system. Over the past century, governments, banks, and corporations created mechanisms that quietly move wealth from ordinary people into larger financial structures. You don't see them happen, you don't approve them, yet you feel their consequences in rising prices, shrinking savings, and the constant feeling that earning more money never quite solves the problem. The first invisible leak is inflation, often called the silent tax. To understand how this works, we have to go back to the early 20th century. Before modern central banking systems took full control of monetary policy, many currencies were tied to physical assets like gold. This limited how much money governments could create. But in 1913, the United States established the Federal Reserve, giving central bankers authority over the country's money supply. Decades later, in 1971, President Richard Nixon ended the gold standard entirely, meaning the dollar was no longer backed by gold. From that moment forward, money could be created largely through financial policy rather than physical reserves. At first, this seemed beneficial because it allowed governments to respond to crises and stimulate economies. However, increasing the supply of money reduces the value of each unit over time. This gradual loss of purchasing power is inflation. Prices rise slowly enough that people rarely notice year to year, but over decades the change becomes dramatic. What $1 could buy 50 years ago now requires several dollars. Your bank balance might stay the same, but the real value of that money keeps shrinking, meaning wealth quietly drains away even if you never spend it. The second leak is interest compounding against you. The idea of compounding is tied to the principle known as compound interest. When people invest money, compound interest multiplies returns over time, which is why long-term investors often become wealthy. But the same principle works in reverse when you borrow. Credit cards, mortgages, car loans, and student loans all rely on compounding interest structures. At first, the monthly payments feel manageable. The loan allows you to purchase something immediately while spreading the cost over years. But as time passes, interest accumulates on top of interest. A mortgage that originally financed a house for $300,000 can end up costing $600,000 or more by the time the loan is fully repaid. That additional money didn't vanish, it flowed directly into financial institutions. Individually, the payments seem small, but across millions of borrowers, they represent a massive transfer of wealth into the banking system. The third invisible leak comes from the rise of the subscription economy. Decades ago, most products were purchased once and owned permanently. People bought movies, music, and software as physical or digital items that belonged to them forever. But companies realized that recurring payments are far more profitable than one-time purchases. Instead of selling products, they began selling ongoing access. Streaming services, cloud storage platforms, digital tools, gaming memberships, and productivity software now operate on monthly subscriptions. Each payment feels small, $5 here, $10 there, but these costs stack up over time. Many people forget about subscriptions they rarely use, while free trials quietly convert into paid plans. Companies design these systems to minimize cancellation and maximize convenience, ensuring that payments continue for months or even years. Individually, these charges appear harmless, but collectively they siphon significant amounts of money from consumers every year. The fourth leak is hidden banking fees. Financial institutions provide services that seem routine: holding your money, transferring funds, and providing debit cards. These conveniences often come with small, barely noticeable charges. Overdraft fees, ATM withdrawal fees, account maintenance fees, and transaction costs can appear on statements almost unnoticed. Each fee might only be a few dollars, which makes it easy to ignore. But the scale becomes staggering when multiplied across millions of customers. Banks collect billions of dollars every year from these small charges alone. Strategy works because people rarely dispute minor fees. Spending time arguing over a $5 charge often feels pointless, yet these tiny deductions repeated over and over again become another steady stream of money, leaving accounts without people truly realizing how much they are losing. The fifth and most complex leak is currency devaluation, driven by government debt and monetary policy. Governments often spend more money than they collect in taxes, creating budget deficits. To cover these gaps, they issue bonds and borrow money from financial markets. Central banks sometimes purchase this debt, effectively injecting new money into the economy. In the short term, this process can stimulate growth or prevent financial collapse. However, over time, it can also weaken the value of the currency itself. When the supply of money increases faster than the production of goods and services, the purchasing power of that currency declines. Savings accounts begin to lose real value, and people are pushed toward investments simply to preserve their wealth. The system quietly encourages risk-taking, even for individuals who would prefer financial stability. These leaks rarely become obvious all at once. They operate slowly, often across decades, which is why they remain largely invisible. But occasionally, the system reaches a breaking point where people begin to notice the effects. One such moment occurred during the 2008 financial crisis. When global banks collapsed under massive debt and risky financial products, governments and central banks intervened by injecting trillions of dollars into the financial system. The intention was to stabilize markets and prevent economic collapse. Yet the long-term consequences reshaped the global economy. Asset prices surged, housing became dramatically more expensive, and the gap between those who owned assets and those who relied solely on wages widened. The invisible leaks suddenly became visible to millions of people who realized the system was structured in ways they had never fully understood. Today, the same patterns continue repeating across the global economy. Inflation slowly erodes purchasing power year after year. Interest payments quietly shift wealth from borrowers to lenders. Subscription services multiply across digital platforms, charging small recurring fees that accumulate over time. Hidden banking charges continue draining accounts in ways that often go unnoticed. And currency values fluctuate as governments manage debt and monetary policy. None of these mechanisms seem dramatic on their own, but together they form a system where small financial losses occur constantly and almost invisibly. There are three important lessons hidden in this story. First, money doesn't only disappear through spending. The structure of the financial system itself can gradually reduce personal wealth. Second, small financial mechanisms become powerful through repetition in time, meaning tiny changes in policy or fees can have massive long-term consequences. Third, understanding how these systems operate is the first step toward protecting your own financial future. Once people recognize the leaks, they can begin making decisions that limit their impact. The most powerful financial systems are not the ones people openly fight against. They are the ones people rarely notice at all, and that raises an unsettling thought. If so much wealth can move quietly through invisible mechanisms built into the economy, many other financial rules exist that most people have never questioned. If you want to explore more hidden systems behind money, debt, and the global economy, make sure to follow the channel for deeper investigations into the forces shaping the financial world.